You ready? All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly mayoral news conference. We really only have two big topics to discuss. The one that I'm sure most of you are here to hear about, Diamara Hall. So the mayor has some updates, and we also have the Deputy Director of Human and Cultural Services on hand to answer any additional questions that you may have. We'll take a few questions at the end of all that the mayor has to say, and then we'll wrap it up.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. As Melissa stated, not much to discuss from prepared remarks, but two big issues that I'm sure that we all want to hear about. We do understand that there's been a lot of discussion surrounding the issues at Thalia-Mara Hall, and understandably so. Dr. Scott, who is the Director of Human and Cultural Services, met with the arts community last week. They laid out their concerns, and we understand them. As a result, we are creating a tab on the city's website that will be updated on Thursday. That page will provide weekly updates on the progress at Thalia-Mara Hall. Anyone will have access to this page, and Mike Williams, the Deputy Director who's over the cultural services side and works closely with the work at Thalia-Mara Hall, will be updating that weekly. Please keep in mind, I think this is the important point that we want to express, that we have consistently made investments in Thalia-Mara Hall. Thalia-Mara was built in the 1960s. It is an aging facility that requires ongoing attention. To wit, earlier this year, we invested in an emergency declaration for almost $65,000 ahead of the IBC. We made repairs to the exterior fountain. The exterior of the building was clean. The HVAC system was serviced. There were numerous concerns about the theater. However, we already have an architectural firm that has been involved in all of these matters. Through the architect and the city leadership, we have scheduled an air test and disclosed the results to the public. We literally released the entire report to anyone who wanted to read it. We have already planned to replace the HVAC system, and the money is present for that. But let's clear up the air on the misconception. There have been rumors that we were cutting the air on and off during the weekend. That is not what took place. There was a malfunction of the air conditioning system on a weekend when no one was present. Literally, the following week, when the issue was discovered, that's when it became apparent, not only to us, but it was publicized to the media and everyone else. It was not that it was neglected. It was the fact that that malfunction took place on the weekend, and the very next week is when it became apparent to everyone else, and that's when a number of things were scheduled as a result. Testing of the rigging and fire curtain by an engineering firm has already been scheduled. Testing of the hydraulics for the orchestra pit is scheduled. Design work for the new elevator is being performed. Every aspect of the theater is being reviewed, tested, and planned, including a time frame for it to be done. Due to the microbial fibers in the building, everyone has been removed out of Thalia-Mara Hall. In fact, it was the statement of one of the employees that said that it wasn't safe for anyone to be there. In order to ensure the safety of all of our workforce and any of the public, we've ordered that no one be in Thalia-Mara Hall. Those employees were told to report to the 633 building on State Street, where all of the city offices are located, because we wanted to ensure the safety of our workforce and the safety of anyone who came into contact with the building. Construction crews are working on the planetarium and had to disconnect the fiber to which affected Thalia-Mara Hall. That addresses the internet questions that have been out there. One of Once the work is completed, service will be restored. I'm sorry. Once the work was, forgive me, I'm going to let you fill in, all right? Once the work was completed, the service was connected, but that was the reason that the service was disconnected, because of the work on the planetarium. Thalia Mara has had phone and internet service for months, and it was only disconnected because of that issue. We know that there are plumbing issues, which are already a part of the renovation package, which we have worked on for the past year. To be clear, there are dozens of restrooms, dozens of toilets in Thalia Mara Hall. Approximately 5 are not working. There are dozens of toilets in Thalia Mara Hall. Approximately 5 are not working. So for someone to represent those things in a more egregious way is an exaggeration and not consistent with where we are in this work and what's going on with Thalia Mara Hall. Elevator service has been restored, but a new elevator is part of the renovation package. So currently, elevator service is restored, right? But there is a new elevator on the way, which is a part of the package. Just like when we're dealing with HVAC systems, we don't go to the elevator store to buy an elevator. It has to be engineered. It takes time. We make certain that it is properly placed for the facility that we are retrofitting that new elevator for, but that is a part of the package. These are just a few of the identified, already planned renovations to Thalia Mara Hall, but I would like Mr. Mike Williams to come forward and share more details on that before we get into more questions about Thalia Mara. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, everybody. You pretty much covered it. We've had a strategic plan in the works for over a year for Thalia Mara Hall that addresses all of these issues. It is, as the mayor said, an aging building, and unfortunately, this emergency situation necessitated an emergency response. So I'm proud of the cultural staff. We have a lot of staff and management and administration that have been committed to the success of this building up until this emergency, and I'm sure that they will remain committed through the emergency and out the other side. And so, we're making our best effort to make sure that the public is aware, despite a lot of chatter, which seems to be a sport around here, but making sure that the public is aware of the steps that we are taking to respond to, again, what is an emergency. You don't get to plan for those. And so, we're responding in kind and being, again, very transparent with the public every step of the way so that everybody knows what's going on.
Let me be clear, because I've had the opportunity to work with a number of members in the arts community that I'm looking upon right now. I've always endeavored to work with you and to respond to your concerns. I'm looking at Mona right now. Mona, we began to start talking about the IBC more than a year or two out from it taking place. We've had concerns with the theater and other issues in preparation for IBC. And even when it looked like it was coming to the last moment, we have never failed to respond, right? And so this is like, any of those issues. This is an older building. We don't have the benefit of a brand new, theater or auditorium for the city. In fact, I think Thalia Mara is a beautiful building, right? I'm very proud of Thalia Mara. But once again, it was built in the 1960s, which anything that was built, buildings or people, right, began to feel, a little pain, and have a little, I'm looking upon my team here, so they're pointing at each other, right? But, I was built in the 1980s, right? I still have a little pain, right, from time to time. So we take it seriously. But please understand that there isn't one investment that fixed Thalia Mara Hall. There isn't one moment that Thalia Mara has challenges. That is an ongoing process with Thalia Mara Hall. Because of its age, where you address one problem, you're only waiting for another problem to rear its head shortly after that. And so we will continue to be vigilant in our efforts to repair these things. We've already secured the money for most of these repairs, but I do think that at the appropriate time, in conjunction with the arts community, we need to have a discussion over what all it takes to maintain that facility on a consistent basis. Part of that conversation is going to be an updated schedule of fees, not to allege or run any of our promoters or arts community away, but to understand that working hand in hand, what you do and what the city does can be accomplished together. And so that's what our plan will be once the appropriate moment manifests. And so that will be a part of our conversation going forward. Switching the page some before the questions, I know that there's going to be a request for an update on JTRAN. We were informed by JTRAN and MV that they are headed back to the bargaining table today. It is our sincere hope that they will come away with an agreement. We support an effort and remind both sides that the primary concern has to be the ridership, has to be service to the public, and then that is my position. And so we're hopeful that those discussions are fruitful and can meet a resolution. But it is at least a positive sign that they are going to the bargaining table today, that they are resuming negotiations. That's all that I have for you with respect to JTRAN. One other note, the budget will be adopted today. There have been some questions, or at least it came from one source asking about my presence in the budget discussions. To be clear, before you see publicly any of the budgets that are presented by any of the departments, I have meetings in my office with each of the department heads, so I already know what's going on. Unfortunately, the responsibilities of the mayor require that I be at multiple places at one time, but there's one of me, all right? And so when I'm unable to do that, I leave them in capable hands. Those capable hands would be the CFO, who literally knows the budget back and forth, right, much better than I do, and the CAO, who's responsible for directing those departments and ensuring the productivity of their work. So it would meet both ends of the spectrum, not only the finance side of the budget, but the productivity side of the budget. And so if I'm not here, then I'm not here for just cause. I won't be here for the adoption of the budget today, not because the budget isn't important to me, not because that process isn't one of the primary functions that we're dealing with, but I have an obligation with the Delta Regional Authority this afternoon, who we hope to get money from, right? And so I don't think that it would be a good gesture for me to stand them up when there are things that we're asking the Delta Regional Authority to achieve on the city's behalf. And so that's why I leave it in capable hands, not because it is any reflection of the importance of that part of our process with the city. So I wanted to let you know that. With that, I'm ready to take questions, and we'll start there. I figured your hand might go up first. Anthony, what's going on?
Thank you. I just want to ask a question, and I don't know what's happened since this happened, but in 2013, the council approved a $5 surcharge for ticket sales at the Ayumero, and that money was supposed to go toward renovations or paying off debt for the major repairs that were done around then. I don't know what's happened to that since. Do you know what's going on?
I would have to check. What, 2013?
It's $3 now.
Yeah.
It started out at $5, and then everybody complained that it was too much, so it's $3.
Yeah.
I know I wrote my surcharge check.
I will share with you this. That predates me, so I would have to do a little bit of research on my own. But what I would say is, when you have an HVAC system, which costs more than $500,000 by itself, right? That while that is an effort and a necessary effort that was taken maybe to put a dent in some of those repairs, Thalliamar isn't getting younger, right? And so the question is whether that change was consistent with the level and the rate of deterioration that we're seeing, right? So I think that needs to be a part of that research. I don't know. Y'all have more information on what was done in 2013 than I do. But what I can say is what we are met with right now is a building that will continue to have many maintenance needs over time. Being able to have a large sum of money to deal with many of the challenges I told you will go a long way. But we need to prepare. I'll tell you this, if you want transparency about what we see in the city. The city has failed to have a capital improvement plan for many things, right? And it takes time, right? So when we have vehicles in public works that go out, right? Proper management, which takes time to get there, would say that you have an indication of the life cycle of each one of those pieces of equipment so that you don't wait for them to die. Instead, when you have some anticipation of when that will happen and there is a plan for its replacement. I didn't walk into that, right? I didn't walk into a capital improvement plan for Thalia Mara Hall, not one that was presented to me, if there is one. And so, unfortunately, in the absence of that, we have to be what I don't like to be. We have to be reactionary. We have to be responsive to many of those challenges. And fortunately, even in a responsive posture, we have a great deal of resources available to deal with some of the more immediate problems. We believe that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, that we can get these repairs made. While other repairs will be necessary over time, we can still stand up services. But whether it's the capital improvement plan, having money to deal with those challenges are helpful to the plan. We have a lot of plans in the city. I won't even start on many of those. What we have failed to have most often is actually a dedicated line of funding to how we will address the plans that we put out. And so both are necessary over time. But the notion that the issues at Thalia Mara Hall are going on deaf ears, consistent with what I just told you, what is planned, what is already happening, what has already been invested, the fact that we always invest in Thalia Mara Hall, anything could be further from the truth, right? So it hasn't fallen on deaf ears. There are repairs that need to be made. It is aging. There are challenges, right? But we're going to make certain that we not only stand up a place where events can take place, but we organize in a structured way how those repairs will take place. Yes, sir. Follow up?
Quick follow-ups on that. I do want to get clarity about how long the air conditioner has been having issues. I think it was said at a council meeting that it's been operating at 25% capacity for about a decade.
It is.
Big center, didn't it?
Yeah, with money, yeah. So the fact that we have the money now is why it will happen. But listen, if I take you around a tour of City Hall, you will find major cracks in this building. You will find that the HVAC system is, sometimes on the fritz. In fact, we were out without air conditioning for some time. And what we did here was what we have been doing at Thalia Mara Hall. We bring in chillers, right? We bring in chillers in order to supplement the work of our aged HVAC system. Once we get the final repair of that, then that will no longer it is expected that will no longer need to take place. So you've never known as a consumer or a guest of Thalia Mara Hall that it was challenged in that way, because we have people who think about those challenges and find solutions to those. So in the absence of everything we may want, we find ways in order to make it through and make do until we can get to the ultimate solution that we all want in place. But it's not just a matter of, Mayor, send money over here to Thalia Mara Hall. What I have to deal with is the many other concerns that you ask me about, because you're not just asking me about Thalia Mara. You're asking me about every library that's around, right? You're asking me about facilities that our workforce is in. And so it's those competing needs that lead to those challenges of how we pay for it and the schedule in which things are done.
I hate to say this, though, this is over a decade, though. The city couldn't find the money in a decade?
Well, I hadn't been here for a decade, so I can't speak to the last decade. But to answer your question, in competing needs, then maybe no, we couldn't, right? Because we have a number of needs in the city. It wasn't not done for a lack of political will, right? What we find is that our needs exceed our means. And so when you're in a circumstance where your need exceeds your means, then you have to find what is the highest priority that has to be dealt with in that time. And so when you're asking me that, and I'm telling you that there's been a supplemental plan that you hadn't known about because we've brought in chillers, right? Then that wasn't the necessary need when compared to other needs that we had. And so the good, yeah, water, sewer, roads, and other things. But the good news is that we do have the money for it now. There's a plan for it. Unfortunately, when it failed over that weekend, it created condensation. It created, give me the word again? Microbial fibers, right? But that hasn't been a condition that our patrons of Thalia Mara Hall have existed in. It hasn't been a challenge that people have had to deal with. And when we became aware of it, you became aware of it. We started moving on it immediately. The very Monday after that happened, I talked with Mike Williams, and he shared with me who he had already been in contact with. The delay was some of the people who do the testing, he had some challenge in getting them there immediately. So he got them there as soon as he could, right? And so we've been working on that. But if we had the time, Mr. Warren, you'd be surprised at the number of things that the city cannot afford and what we have to go through. In fact, that explains many of the things that people become frustrated with that don't happen. It's not because we don't have a desire. It's because we don't have the money. All right. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to go white shirt because I saw her hand earlier, and then orange shirt.
Okay. So Ballet Magnificent and Broadway and Jackson have made claims that the city has been transparent with their communications as far as to what's going on in Thalia Mara Hall. So can you just speak on what that communication has been like? And also, it was previously stated that all events will be relocated to the Coliseum, but Kevin Hart just canceled. Is there any reason why that event wasn't moved?
I will let Mike Williams speak to the specific scheduling of events. I know that there was a press release with several members of the arts community and what their communication was. What we have outlined when it came to, for instance, the HVAC thing, we were talking with you the very next week, right? Now, was there an effort to reach out with them independent of what was communicated publicly? I think that that's something that we can receive as constructive advice and criticism in terms of what helps them, right? I think that is why our not planning director, but our Human and Cultural Services director met with the arts community, not only to hear their concerns, but to schedule a more and effective, transparent way of communicating those things. That is why I spoke about the tab that we're creating on the city's website. That is not only for them, that is for the public that comes to many of their events. And what we're doing, just like we did with traffic lights, right? We're going to update that weekly so that you understand what's going on with the repairs there. As I stand, I'm not the one who's typically in the position that I communicate with each one of these organizations. I communicate about the 30,000-foot view of where we're going with Thalia Mara Hall, and we receive the critique of the different vendors, and what I am is responsive when they call me. I've never failed to respond to a meeting that anyone's had. I can remember when the city was doing concerts, and some of our community that does promotion felt excluded from that. I had them develop a plan to work with you along that, right? So I will say, and this isn't to everybody, while we want to improve our communication and find ways that that's more effective, that because I make myself as accessible as I can be, that if you have a challenge, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So if you have a concern that you're aware of, then communicate, and we work through plans of how we will deal with that. All right. Kevin Hart?
Also, with regard to the communication, we've been in regular communication with individual members of our arts community, our arts partnerships, the entire time, and everyone, if nothing else, has my phone number. I didn't think anyone had been bashful about using it. I think the failing was that we did not create a central place, because you have these discussions with people over and over again. There's new developments every day as we are crafting our emergency response. And sometimes a conversation you have with somebody at 1 o'clock may differ from the one that you have somebody at 4 o'clock. I do not think that that represents a lack of transparency as much as just a developing situation. I mean, we are reacting and responding to an emergency. And so we have been expressly clear with everybody, all of our arts partners, our performance partners, that our doors are open. We do not ignore calls or emails. We respond to everybody. And to that end, we've met with several of them several times since this emergency started to help make sure that we're all coordinating our timing and our scheduling in the way that will impact operations at Thalia-Mar Hall the least. With regard to Kevin Hart, I won't speak for the promoters because we don't have anything to do with the way that those are handled, reschedules, and what have you. But everybody was well aware, again, this is an emergency situation. Timelines have been dependent upon the determination of scope for the remediation response. These, again, are ongoing and developing components of the remediation response. And so as those timelines come in to help us inform the next steps, all of our performance partners are aware at this stage, because it's very fluid right now, everybody is aware at this stage that they know when we know, and we are bound to schedule in accordance with what is required by that remediation plan.
So, to your question, what I will say again is that, with the benefit of hindsight 2020, we do recognize that there were ways that we could be more communicative with our arts community in a way that, as Mike said, was universal to all of them, and they would be able to access that information. Maybe, while this provides information to the public, all of the things that they need and are concerned with can't be taken out of a press conference. And so that is why, again, there will be a tab on the city's website for Thalia-Mar Hall. That tab will keep you updated on each and every renovation that I've spoken of. And once again, we will then get to a place where we talk about a proper scale of where we should be with fees and everything else to make certain that we maintain from that point in conjunction with the arts community, so that we talk about your side of it, what you do, and our side of it, what we try to accomplish to curate a facility which is conducive to the events that you want to have. Orange shirt, and then I'm coming to you.
As far as the theater, do you know how much it brings in each year, and is that enough to cover the cost of the renovations? And then I had a J-Tran question. A lot of the past writers are feeling as though like their voice is not being heard in those negotiations, and a lot of talk to some with disabilities that need the bus to get around. So
yeah, well, let me say this. I'll take the latter question first. I respect and appreciate the concerns and the pain of our ridership, and that is my principal concern. To be clear, the city of Jackson is not a part of those negotiations, right? That is between MV, the management company, and the union, which is the workforce that they hire, right? They are not employees of the city, so we're not at the table. So I'm merely, any conversation that I've had with them outside of the negotiation table has been to center that point, to center the point that our riders should be the primary concern, that there are people who ride J-Tran who it's not just a matter of convenience to them, it's not a luxury to them. It is, for some of our disabled community, it is the only feasible means for them to get to and from the places that they need to get to. That was what I put in, I think, a release on how, our position about the strike. I have written MV. I do have a letter that, to be quite honest with you, needed to go through another revision or another draft that was intended to go to the union. But to both sides, I want to underscore the importance of our ridership, the importance of the fact that there are people who depend on them each and every day. And so I want to encourage resolution to their various sides. I'm going to, while I have knowledge about the sides, I think it's best that I stand here in a posture of neutrality so that, I don't complicate the negotiations or frustrate one side and make it any more difficult. But I do think both sides need to keep at the center of their hearts and their negotiations the people that depend on them each day. Yes, sir. Oh, what was the about? So I can share with that it does not bring in enough money. First of all, let's not only talk about renovations. There are a number of things that go into. You have a staff that works behind the stage that has to be paid, right? You have janitorial services that have to be maintained for Thalia Mara Hall. You have a light bill, just like you have at your house. We have a light bill for Thalia Mara Hall, along with a multitude of other expenditures that have to be maintained, in addition to the deterioration of the facility itself. So no, it's not enough. Let's be clear that in recent years, we've seen some of the most profitable years in Thalia Mara's history. So there's reasons to have a positive, outlook on Thalia Mara. But at the same time, yes, there are repairs that need to be made. We are aware of that, and we have all of those immediately identified repairs scheduled and identified. Yes, sir.
In August, we first reported what the city is calling early microbial growth. When did the city know? When did Thalia Mara Hall management know? And then when are we looking at the hall to be repaired?
So the microbial growth occurred, like I said, the air conditioning unit malfunctioned on a weekend. None of us are scientists and didn't, I'm still learning the microbial growth language. What we saw was something that caused concern. And so Mike Williams called to have a firm come and do a test. So we didn't know what the microbial growth was or any of that until it was tested and validated what it was and what the steps of remediation would be. Do you want to speak to the remediation steps?
Do you know what specific weekend it was?
I don't. I remember it happening, but I didn't.
I don't know off the top of my head. I think it's all been made public record, but I don't recall off the top of my head. And so the term microbial growth, right, to make sure that nobody thinks that's a dodge, as soon as we were notified and we scheduled testing firm to come out and take a look at it, what we observed, we were told by the people that were testing, was not what qualified for them to call it mold, and that further testing was required. We commissioned that further testing from an independent testing body, and we released those reports to the public. I think everybody should be okay with saying we found some mold in Thalia Mara Hall. The reports conclude it's not toxic mold, it's not black mold, it's none of that. It's just the kind that you get when stuff is too wet for too long. So, just so everybody's clear on what the microbial growth is and why it initially began to be communicated that way. What was the second question? I'm sorry.
He wanted, you didn't know the answer. He wanted a time frame. We can give you a time frame, but I don't remember the exact weekend. It was, what, 3-4 weeks ago?
Yeah, but as we found out, we made all of it public, so it's consistent with whatever we published already.
You know when it's expected to be open? How long these repairs will take?
Well, I'm reticent to give a timeline, any prematurely because we have not gotten a concrete timeline as a response to the scope document that we've received. We're reviewing it now. We think that it could be best case, and again, I hate to say don't hold me to this in front of a microphone, but best case 4 weeks to take to go through the remediation process. Worst case 8 weeks, and that's from when we hit go. We're looking to hit go as soon as possible. I'm hopeful that can be in the next week or so, but again, it's an ongoing situation. But again, as the mayor has communicated, we are letting everybody know every step of the way. When we know, you guys know.
The HVAC's being replaced, right?
Yes, actually it is, and I think it was your question. The 25% capacity. So that's not something that was reflected in the theater, right? So the building was being cooled, but the machines were working too hard to do so, which these are already aging machines. This did not help to prolong the life of the machines that we were using. And so it was inevitable that there were going to be some failures, and that's why we started the strategic planning to replace them years ago. I have to acknowledge all of our state partners who have provided funding, who have worked hard at the legislature to provide funding for Thalia Hall. They recognize the hall's importance to the entire state, and therefore have made some investments that will allow us to make these fixes. But these are big fixes, and they are more than the facility, than our budget could bear, really, at any one moment. Luckily, we were able to secure these state funds and create the plan to finally be able to fix something that's been a problem for probably a decade or better.
Yeah, one more question, but let me say this before. The structure of how a city manages its facilities is a little different than private enterprise, right? Private enterprise manages its fees and those structures in order to maintain a profit, right? That's not the game that the city is in. We want to maintain these things for quality of life, right? So we're not trying to gain some significant profit over these things. So when I talk about managing a method by which we maintain these facilities and working alongside the arts community, I'm not saying it so that we become, give me a big out facility, Live Nation. We're not trying to be Live Nation in terms of how we manage facilities. But we do need to make certain, listen, and not to make a political point that the presidential cycle is dealing with, but you have inflation on everything in the world, right? Everything else costs more. And so, unfortunately, the cost of repairs, the cost of those things go up too. And so we make sure we have to account for those things. Last question, Charlie.
Just two quick questions. First one.
I'm gonna give you two for the last one.
The tab, when is that going up? Is that going up on Thursday? It's going up on Thursday.
The tab. Oh yeah, I couldn't hear you.
And then secondly, you keep preferring to say that the city now has the money to fix the HVAC system. Is that from
the state legislature? That is from the legislature, which shows the recognition of the concern before this became, relevant to you, because it was a part of a legislative request, right? We would not have requested it if we didn't know that it would eventually be a problem, right? And so when we requested it, unfortunately, them meeting that request and us being able to get those things on the ground, the HVAC system said, I'm going to clunk out on you a little earlier, right? And so that's unfortunate. It created other concerns, but it's not because no one is either unaware or unconcerned with the problem. Just the timing of step A to get the money, step B, all of the things we need to do to ultimately get that repair or replacement in the event of the HVAC system just didn't happen in the timing that we would have wanted to happen. Thank y'all very much, and look forward to speaking with you again soon.